first historic country rock record, Safe at Home, by his group, the International Submarine Band. And we are fortunate enough to have one of that group here with us today. And I wonder if John Corneal would just get up and talk a little bit about making that historic record, and wondering if at the time they realized what kind of history they were making. And remember, at the time, Graham Parsons was all 20 years old. Would you welcome John?
Well, I really didn't know I was going to be talking today, but that's all right. This is my briefcase, y'all. First time I saw this record, we still call them records where I come from, and it is a CD, but I call them a record. And it was a lot bigger than this first time I ever saw it. It about that big, you know what I mean? It was an LP, vinyl record. It wasn't near as nice as this. This is a package full. I mean, it's got it all. It's got a little booklet and all this kind of stuff. It's really sharp stuff. Things have changed a lot in the record industry. I guess everybody's in the same boat, and if they're going to sell some records, they ought to make it high quality. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? Anyhow, those were the days. When I look back on those times, I remember that was a spring. I was living in Nashville, and I'd come home as often as I could, and the spring was one of my favorite times to come home and smell orange blossom, so to speak. Drive through the orange groves. I just loved it, and really it was worth a trip to Florida. And that's when I ran into Graham again, spring of '67. He was staying at a motel right on the old curve on Cypress Gardens Road. The motel's not there anymore. For a few days, and then he moved on out to Lake Eloise to the family house out there. There was a guest cottage, and he had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. But yeah.
I remember one of those nights in particular.
Yeah, me too. I got a vague memory anyway.
You remember it, you weren't there.
Well, no, it wasn't quite like that. But anyhow, he said, "Man, you got to come over here and listen to some of this music I've discovered." And now you got to bear in mind, now I'd already been working and traveling on the road for Ground Opera stars. So anyhow, he said, "I got some music I've discovered," and he starts playing this tape recorder. You were there.
Yeah, Don Rich singing harmony with himself, and Albert King.
Yeah. But I remember he had some George Jones and some Merle Haggard and some Loretta Lynn. Of course, I knew Loretta. I played on her Christmas album, and I toured when I was with the Wilburn Brothers. She wasn't big enough to carry her own band. We backed her up on a lot of shows.
You want to tell them about sitting on the hump with the Wilburns car?
Yeah, sitting on the hump. Yeah.
The new guy.
Yeah, us younger guys had less seniority as always, and when it's a long time before they all started having buses. Prior to that, it was Cadillacs, the biggest one you could get with an equipment trailer, and that's when I worked for the Wilburn Brothers. They was the biggest duo in the country, and they had a regular Cadillac sedan pulling an equipment trailer, and 6 of us on the road. So I rode the hump in the back, because I was the youngest, and I'm telling you what, that was painful. 700 or 800 miles. I remember my ankles would swell. It wasn't good. But anyhow, and life on the road was rough, and then of course I kept hearing these stories about birds and people like that, and all these big groups get to fly to gigs, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I need to go to California and join a group or something. Well, then I ran into Graham, and man, he started talking my talk, that stuff I wanted to hear, and he's good at it. And I knew it. I was planning to go to California, and he said, "Well, man, we've got a record deal, and let's go do it." So they flew me out there, and God, I just thought, you talk about culture shock, out there in California. I think the first whole day I was there, we all went out to Peter Fonda's house. Everybody but me was naked, including Bridget Fonda, and she was about that tall, weird. And I was so obese that I just wore a big old surfer bathing suit. It usually came off when I jumped down the diving board, but anyhow, you know, those were really the days. I ended up renting a house up there myself on Ridpath Drive and Laurel Canyon, and all these celebrities lived around. Right down from me was Billy James's house. He had, well, I guess he dropped acid and dropped out when he was the #1 man at CBS Records in California, and all these, you know, really talented people lived there, like Jackson Brown when he was 16. He was my next door neighbor. Sandy Kotikoff, the second drummer for Mad Dogs and Englishmen, Joe Cocker, and oh yeah, Penny Nichols. She was on Elektra Records, a folk singer, and she lived there. Right up the next door was Barry Friedman's house. His funny name was Fraser Mohawk, but he was really a producer for Elektra Records, and all these other freaks lived up there. And right up the hill, there was Bishop's house, you know, and all this craziness, you know. And but all of a sudden, I was amongst them all, you know. And actually, you know, as Graham, you know, we just all went in there together, you know. Once I got out there, it was, okay, that's where we're going, you know. And so we met a lot of celebrities, but anyhow, we were all really proud of this record. And the problem we had with not being able to tour is that we had some personnel problems within the band. We had a guitar player that he freaked playing in front of an audience, you know. Now, I come from a bunch of players that are not that way. They play better in front of an audience, you know, or a microphone that's recording them, and when I get paid to do it, you know. It's a weird thing, but anyhow, we weren't able to tour, but Graham and I did go sit in at the Palomino and a few other places. They'd introduce us as the International Submarine Band, and it was Graham and me. And there was always a set of drums. You know, we'd sit in, use the rest of the Palomino band and the two of us and do some tunes, but John would always make excuses. Oh man, my guitar's not playing right, my blah, 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 blah. And so we had a tour come up as opener for the Turtles. Back then it was 10 days work for $1,000 a day. That was in, oh man, that was in 1968, early 68. Well, we could have got around pretty good with that in 1968 and come back with some money, I believe. Well, John said his guitar wasn't playing right, and he put it in the shop, you know, so. Well, I know Graham was frustrated, and the fact that, you know, his personal manager, Larry Spector, was promoting him getting with the Byrds. And then the lull within the group and all that, you know, I could see, you know, well, because I was experienced at seeing this happen before, you know, I saw the handwriting on the wall, and I knew that, you know, it was just a matter of time, and we were all going to be holding the bag, which is basically what happened. But Graham did fit in with the Byrds, and he actually introduced me to all those guys and got me in on the album, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, and I do appreciate that, because, you know, it's a funny thing about credits, you know, they're with you always, you know. Now that they got internet, you know, these credits mean something sometimes. Anyhow, it was quite a time for all of us, and so he, you know, he was gone, and life for me, you know, changed. You know, I've done a lot of things, worked for a lot of people since then. Bands, Dillard and Clark. Fly Reader Brothers came later, of course. You know, was involved with that. I'm really amazed at this.
Dillard and Clark was on that Mark album too.
Well, that was good. Oh, by the way, there's a record song on there called "Through the Morning, Through the Night" that Gene Clark wrote. It is the most beautiful song. If you ever get a chance to listen, you just got. I mean, I listen to that thing, I get goosebumps. It's so pretty. Now, Gino, he was a good friend of mine because we were in that band together. But he was the tambourine man. He was the guy that made all the money in the Byrds.
Because he wrote all the songs.
He wrote all the songs. He drove Ferraris and they drove Porsches. So, and they all hated him for it. But he's just a good old boy from Bonner Springs, Kansas. You know, me and Doug Dillard and Gene were like that. You know, we hoisted a lot together, you know. We were hoisters together. And Harry Dean Stanton, he was our other buddy. He was at all those picking sessions, you know, when we were hoisting them. So anyhow, but that's out for me. But anyhow, that's enough out of me, y'all. I'm so grateful y'all are here. Jimmy, it's so good to see you, man. Bye. Thank you.